Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the brand new episode of The Encounter, the show that sheds light on the extraordinary people shaping our world. I am your host, Janaki Ram, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to two incredibly inspiring individuals today. Meet Venkataraman Subramanyan, fondly known as Venkat, and his powerhouse of a partner, Sripriya, a dynamic duo that defines success. These two are the force to be reckoned with. So, Venkat and Priya, welcome to Jani.tv, and I'm glad to have you for the encounter.
Absolutely our pleasure, Johnny.
Thank you so much, Jani. This is we hope that we can add value to this conversation and to the viewers as well.
Absolutely. I want to set the context. I want to formally introduce both of you before I jump into the interesting discussion. So, let me give you some context about Venkat. I know Venkat for about 2 decades now. In 99, when I joined Microsoft, he was my first manager, and more than that, a great mentor. So he's the one who helped me improve my communication skills, my presentation skills, and my stage fear was completely tackled by him, and he made me a better presenter. And of course, he's one of the best presenters I have seen in the industry. So he taught me the fundamentals of sales, which eventually helped me become a solopreneur. Venkat was responsible for driving sales excellence at Microsoft India and eventually at Microsoft Asia Pacific. So, coming to Sripriya, she established the coaching practice for Tripura Multinational and the Global Coaching Lab. She currently leads the innovation and operations functions for both the entities. So, Venkat and Priya have a very ambitious plan: touch and transform 100 million lives by 2025 and 1 billion lives by 2030 through Tripura Multinational and Global Coaching Lab. So again, welcome to the show. I'm truly honored to have both of you. So I'm going to get started with Priya. So Priya, tell us about your role and how you support Venkat in this journey.
Thank you, Jani. And so both our organizations, as you just mentioned, right, Tripura Multinational and Global Coaching Lab. I think the fulcrum for that is started way back when we two got married in 2002. I didn't know it would take a shape of Tripura and Global Coaching Lab, but we started just a few days before we got married. We went and gave a very princely sum of 25,000 rupees at that time to the Ramakrishna Mission, the boys' school or something in Chennai. And we felt that kind of gave us both immense satisfaction, and we felt that should be the start of our lives together. And so ever since then, we always identified that anything that came with education, and at that time, Venkat was also leading the Microsoft business for education, I think, in India. So something about education gave us a lot of joy, and and it kind of made us feel happy. And then fast forward, and in 2010, when Venkat said, "Look, I want to make others great," I opened my eyes and said, "What do we do?" When you said "make others great," it's really a large set of words. But then we said, "Let's go back to what gave us greater happiness, which was education and working around it." And then Venkat obviously was in sales, so he said, "Let's start with what you know, rather than trying to start with what you don't know." Right? So we started with that, and that was the foundation, the mindset, the belief. That was the foundation for both our organizations. And then we said, possible always starts with people. And so we had, started building Tripura. Venkat was putting a lot of effort into it. And after 2 years or something, after I saw him doing all this busyness, I said, "Let me support you." That's when I said, "I want to join hands with you." And I said, sales is not something I know. And I didn't know anything that he was doing with training, because I was not a facilitator or anything. Then I said, coaching seems very accessible. So why not I just become a coach and see what I can do for the company. So I got certified, as I went through certification primarily. And in the process, you had to go and get a certain number of hours that you need to do to gain that certification. And I was, trying to find whether I do it with friends and family, or, whom to go and coach, because you're not even a certified coach. Who's going to ask you to come? And that's when I went into one of those Sunday afternoon freaky incidents where we said, okay, let's go online, see who others are there, who other is there to kind of go and get to get certified. And then I went into a forum and posted a post which said, I'm getting certified as a coach. Why not, if others are there, why not we coach each other to build each other's business? And that was the start. So that forum was the platform. I went and put a message like this, and then people started coming together. And so in a month, I had almost 500 people in the network talking to each other. We were coaching each other. I, of course, finished all my requirements for the certification. But in the process, I landed with an organization called Global Coaching Lab. So I started to support Venkat with Tripura Multinational, then ended up with a company which was around coaching. And I didn't know I had leadership, and all those words didn't make sense. Then it said, okay, I have a company called Global Coaching Lab, and both of this should work towards building people. And I think eventually today we are about 13 years with Tripura and about 12 years with Global Coaching Lab. But what we've realized is that I bring a lot of divergence and newer perspectives into the team, into the organization, because I have I can't think of convergence because mine is always a bigger lens, and then Venkat has that structure, the discipline, and so when I have all the broad thinkings, then he'll say these are the things you need to focus on now, or this is what we need to do. So that combination of working together has eventually helped us to grow the business journey, and that's where we stand today, looking to growing more and making more meaning.
Fantastic, very inspiring. So before I switch to Venkat, I want to share this with my audiences. So there is a reason why I got Venkat and Priya on this show. When I was extremely new to the tech industry, entered Microsoft with a lot of passion for Visual Basic, and I had no clue about sales, Venkat taught me the importance of sales. He literally handheld me to position technology to enterprises, sell the value, and taught me how to basically sell to any customer. And that's a very important skill. So I thought, Venkat being one of the best salespersons that I have known in the industry, I want everyone who is watching this to learn the importance of sales. And that is a very important skill, whether you are a developer or a designer. So that is the context that I want to use to get Venkat onto the spotlight. So Venkat, from your perspective, why is it important for every professional to have sales skills? How does this impact the career of a developer or an individual contributor who is not in a sales org, but still a part of a business or just running his own freelancing? So why sales is so important?
Absolutely. Great question, Johnny. Pleasure to be here. Now, remember, sales skills are life skills. And the reason that these are life skills is that, I use an acronym called PINS, which is every human being should know how to persuade others, how to influence others, how to negotiate with others, and how to sell to others. So those are foundational skills every person should have. Now, when you think about it from a developer's perspective, remember, a developer is thinking in a different language. They need to be communicating in the English language. So that means a developer needs to be operating with what we call simplicity, brevity, and clarity. Simplicity means using simple words the other person can understand. Brevity means speak less, mean more. Clarity means when you speak, the other person is able to understand you very clearly. And that's what is important. Now, if you're a developer, what you have to go ahead and think about is it's not the technology and the nuances, it is how people multiple levels above you are able to understand what truly you are developing. So, which means that in the art of communication, you need to start looking at how much of business acumen and how much of financial acumen am I building in that helps me communicate at a higher level. So think about it as life skills. think about it as basic pins that every person should have, but think about it as also saying, how do I communicate in such a way people 2 levels above are able to understand the power and potential of what I'm developing? That's what is required, Johnny.
Excellent, excellent. I love the acronym PINS. Great takeaway. So Venkat, I still remember the day we closed the $1 million deal together back in 2001, 2002. And after that, you moved on to run sales excellence at Microsoft, and then took over Microsoft Asia Pacific sales excellence role. You transformed Microsoft subsidiaries and built your foundation based on that. And today you offer that as a service and transform many organizations. But for a lot of people who do not have sales background, they get confused. They may not understand what is sales excellence. So how do you define sales excellence?
The way I define sales excellence is the ability to make a clear difference for your customer and the ecosystem. In fact, I'm a great fan of acronyms, having come from Microsoft, right? And the fact that sometimes acronyms can be mnemonics, an aid to memory. So much like what I talked about pins, I use a simple acronym called COPE. How do you cope for the future? So when you think about sales excellence, it's about, are you keeping the customer at the center? Do you solve for the opportunity? Are you including the people? And E is all about the ecosystem. So when you think about sales excellence, you're primarily saying, is there customer centricity? Is there opportunity, rigor, and discipline? Is there unleashing of people and potential? And very clearly, when it comes to ecosystems, are we able to enable the ecosystem to start delivering more? Those are some of the elements that we need to look at. And sales organizations need to step up to include all of these different elements, the customers, the deals, the people, and the ecosystem. And that's how you're able to thrive into the future, Johnny.
Great, great. I really like cope. I think everyone need to cope up with that. So fantastic. So Priya, along with Venkat, you would have worked with organizations of different sizes, from mid-sized companies to large enterprises, and even some of the established startups, maybe. So when it comes to the sales angle, what do you see as the cultural difference? How does the sales culture differ from a mid-sized emerging company to a well-established enterprise?
Correct. I mean, when I look at it from as an observer, because I don't necessarily do the enablement work like what Venkat does, but I'm looking at it as and supporting him in coaching them and also supporting to grow our own business, which I think I wouldn't call it as a startup now because it's about crossed a decade plus. So we're slowly growing to slightly bigger size now from a startup. So what I'm seeing is that larger organizations obviously have people and resources, and a lot of those things are available to them in plenty, but their agility to change is not as fast as what a startup system or a smaller organization can have. The agility to change is much faster in an environment like what I'm seeing. So we are able to shift to customer requirements because we are more hungry. So when I see that hunger, in organizations like ourselves to go and make a difference and learn something new, and and nothing really is holding us back. Whereas in the larger organizations, of course, there's a bigger culture to deal with. And then the sometimes it's bureaucracy and the processes that have been set. And those are some of the things that I am looking at as an observer in this shifts between what I see there. But of course, the problems are quite similar. I mean, everybody is I wouldn't say use the word struggle, but everybody is challenging boundaries. That's what I see at this point in time. Challenging boundaries, challenging status quo, and also challenging some of the beliefs that we've grown up with so far, because what successes worked in the past are no longer relevant for us. And as we move into the future, it's really about each individual's propensity to change. And I think it's not just a large organization or a small organization. I would look at it as an individual who has the belief and the ability to change and make a difference. That is very critical, and that's when you can get team players who can align to the vision, and that's when you can have people who can adapt quickly. So I think a lot of things rests with the individual. At the end, the fulcrum is basically the individual. And when you say in a sales organization, the individual could be the manager or the sales leader driving all of this. So I think it's the belief that the other person has. And another important aspect, Johnny, which I've been talking about a lot these days, and it's a learning that I've had as an executive coach, is the fact that you need to have, something called unconditional positive regard. When especially in the people development field that we are in, if we want to enable somebody or empower somebody or accelerate somebody, you need to believe in that person and not get your judgments and your biases and your unwanted beliefs come in the way of saying that this person can believe and move forward, and they can grow and shine. So I think that particular mindset could be a great enabler for both smaller organizations and larger organizations, because the larger organizations have much bigger issues to grapple with. But one thing that I've seen in a smaller organization is also the fact that when there is a founder who is very passionate, they should be and they primarily are the fulcrum for the business also, because that's where the seed of the idea and the propensity to go to markets originated. But the people that they're building, they should be able to blend and elevate them, because the founder should not get carried away by their idea and move in a direction which is not conducive for the team, right? So those are some of the things that I'm seeing, both from my own personal experience in growing our business, and also as an observer and an executive coach, looking at what organizations are, grappling with. I'm not sure if I answered what you said, but I hope there are some pointers for our audiences from this answer.
You did. The bottom line is fire in the belly. Whether it is a startup or mid-sized organization or a large enterprise, fire in the belly. From the founder to the feet on the street folks, everyone should have that burning desire to make a difference. I think that's what it all comes down to. So speaking of that, Venkat, I vividly remember the stories that you used to share about selling PCs in Coimbatore for Wipro at the very beginning of your career. And it's amazing, from there to where you are today, from Coimbatore to Singapore, and you have seen the entire transformation of the industry, from desktop PCs to the entire Microsoft stack to cloud and SaaS. So along with this evolution of the industry, the sales function has also evolved. It has fundamentally changed, right? For example, back in our days, we used to sell licenses, and that was the entity or the unit of sales. Basically selling license and closing a deal on number of licenses was the metric that we used to track. But now with cloud and SaaS, the metrics have changed, the industry has changed. But how do you think the sales function has caught up with this change and the evolution?
Beautiful question, Johnny. In fact, there are a number of perspectives here. The first change that we need to be careful about is the fact that customers are far more informed. They have far more information. And given the proliferation of technology, they have far more potential within the system. Which means if you are a salesperson who is working with customers, you need to understand the industry, you need to understand the organization, you need to understand the role and the individual. That goes without saying. But primarily, what you need to focus on is predominantly around differentiation, Johnny. There is a saying, if I'm not different, I deserve to be commoditized. So very clearly, if you're going ahead and engaging with customers, you need to come across as being differentiated, because it is only in your personal differentiation that your customer will see your organizational differentiation. That's the key. So, how are you providing a distinct, differentiated, and memorable customer experience is for point number one, correct? Which means you're able to understand business, etc. The second thing that is happening is that as we moved over from PCs, client server to cloud and everything else, is what we call as the transfer of risk. Previously, the risk used to be on the customer that they need to deploy, that they need to get the benefit. Right now, the risk is with the seller. If the customer doesn't consume, that's it, you don't have business. So, very clearly, what this transfer of risk means is that every seller needs to move away from thinking transactionally to thinking lifetime. So it is all about customer lifetime value. So it's no longer about deployment, it's all about consumption. So very clearly, the lenses is not looking at the transaction, the lenses is starting to look across multiple horizons. The third last
Fantastic.
change that I'm seeing is primarily the fact that you cannot solve for world hunger alone, right? So, what salespeople need to learn are two things, which is predominantly to say, hey, how can I team better? And how can I work with the ecosystem better? So, it's almost like a Wi Fi signal. The salesperson is in the middle, at the bottom of the dot, but then they are looking at what is the team, what is the ecosystem, how do we serve the customer? And if that divergence doesn't happen, if that ability to transmit value doesn't happen right through, right, your customers are not going to be successful, and therefore you are not going to be successful. So if you're looking at traits for, the trends and traits, what I'm seeing those three different things. One is predominantly the transfer of the ability to differentiate. The second is your ability to think lifetime. And the third is to team and deliver on the ecosystem journey. Those are the fundamental changes that I'm able to see.
Fantastic. Back in the days of boxes and licenses, whether it was Microsoft or Oracle or SAP, they sold the box, the license, and didn't go back to the customer for next 3 years till the next version came.
Correct.
But now it's very different. You sell services and you get your revenue based on their consumption. So it is an ongoing relationship and the value that you need to deliver. Very well put. So Venkat, switching gears, today the entrepreneurial landscape is very different. So I'm seeing a lot of solopreneurs like me, who find a niche and who actually create a business around that. And of course, it's value centric and value driven, which is the foundation for anything that you sell, whether yourself as a product or a large enterprise product. So, from your perspective, how can entrepreneurs, leverage this gig economy wave, which is picking up a lot of momentum, a lot of attention?
True. Now, there is a lot to learn, right? Remember, when you say the future of work may not necessarily lie within organizations, right? So it may lie outside of the organization. So much like what I've seen Google do, it's an agglomeration of skills that come together at different points in time to deliver outputs. And that, I think, is the future. So when you're an entrepreneur, what you need to start thinking about is, where am I headed? What kinds of skills are required? And whether I can go ahead and source those skills. Now, when you source those skills, at least from our perspective, we look out for three things. The first is your heart in the right place? Right? So that means, in our kind of business, you primarily say, hey, do you get joy from making others great? The second is there enough intellectual horsepower that can make a difference for the customer? And lastly, are you able to team and clear others' path? So very simply put, I look at EQ, IQ, and TQ, right? The emotional quotient, the intelligence quotient, and the teaming quotient, right? That's what we need to start looking at. And lastly, what you have to look at is any relationship is a two-way street. So it can't be that hey, I have a requirement, you just come in, you deliver, you run. It doesn't work that way. The more you are able to make it two-way, that is when the relationships stick. That is when we move beyond the transaction. That is when there is a true fusion of capabilities and purpose. That's what we'll have to do. So it's an opportunity. The fact is, I would even say it's an under-leveraged opportunity, but it requires maturity, it requires effort, it requires investment. But when done right, it will have huge impact on your ability to marry skill with scale and speed.
Perfect. I can relate to it. Ultimately, again, it's the value that you deliver and how much you demonstrate. So perfect. So Priya, I have this question for you. Now, you have worked with many professionals and organizations over the last decade. And today's sentiment is very different. Everyone is very anxious about the current economic situation, and there is a risk looming around. So what's your advice to survive and thrive in these changing and challenging times?
I mean, it's a very pertinent question, and thanks for asking, Johnny. I think what I see here is that a lot of people they've arrived in certain position, and then there is, once they arrive in a certain position of power or leadership, or whatever they have come there to do, I think there is a struggle that starts after that, and that's where I have to strive to challenge boundaries, and then I'll have to thrive in an ecosystem where there are multiple people as competent as I am. And when that's happening, I feel some of the things that people should do to to not miss the race, and to be there, and have the tenacity to go till whatever they're there to do and achieve their aspirations, is one is learn the art of being politically savvy. And when I say political, there's a negative connotation often associated with the word politics itself. I mean, people often, when in any workshop or any coaching scenario, when I ask people what do they understand, they usually, give all the negative connotations, because that's
The
what
water cooler talk.
Yes, where you have some, I mean, right from the Machiavelli politics to what's happening. So people usually say, I'm not in that game. But what we encourage them to do after that is to say, hey, politics is a clash of self-interests, and that's how you have to accept that it is good to be there and to play the game in a way that is of service to others. The moment we play the game and it is for serving self-interest, only then it becomes negative. But there is an art to understanding and recognizing, yes, I have a certain interest and there are people around me with some interests. And now how do we all come together to achieve the larger outcomes? And that's also an important struggle for a lot of leaders, and especially in women leaders as well, whom I work with. So how do I build my stakeholder network? That becomes a very critical aspect in the scenario that we are seeing as well today, with a lot of flux in the movement in the workforce. So we really need to learn to play the game, learn how to manage stakeholders effectively, which is all about networking skills and your influencing skills, and all of that needs to be consciously developed and put to use. And then, of course, how do you be that self-motivated or a self-driven person? Because sometimes what I see is people falling for their inner struggles, and that's where they I see people sometimes leaving the workforce, and then where it's because of their inner struggles and their inner battles. So how do you keep the energy within you to help you achieve the and challenge boundaries is also something that I see that people should consciously develop. And then that would obviously help them to thrive in an ecosystem, because they get to nourish themselves and they have an opportunity to nourish a lot of people around them. So I think getting this equation right is critical for people to be part of a system that where they believe that their aspirations are there, and for them to go the step, because they all take a lot of effort to arrive into a position of leadership, because they have great skills, they have great capabilities, and that brings them to that position. But then it's about challenging the boundaries and learning to nurture possibilities for themselves and for others. That's where people need to take conscious efforts. And I think it starts, once again, I go back to it, it starts with that individual's motivation and ability to change and adapt to the requirements of the ecosystem.
Perfect. Perfect. It does sound like a very crisp summary of multiple Stephen Covey's books. So, very well put. So, switching gears, again, Venkat, I'm going to give a backstory before I ask you this question. So, I very vividly remember Venkat sitting in the airports and plugging in TechNet and MSDN CDs into his Toshiba Tecra laptop and reading about Active Directory and Windows server details, and using the right terminology at the customer place. And I was actually very surprised to see a salesperson speaking the lingo of a technologist and confidently presenting to the customers. So that actually talks about the readiness. Now, so Venkat, the leading question that I have is, as technologists, we have a well-defined readiness and upgrade plan. A lot of organizations set aside budget. A lot of individuals spend a lot on online courses and attending various courses.
Sure.
Not everyone can be like you, who can absorb highly technical content and use that in a sales pitch effectively. So, how do you define the readiness quotient of a sales professional? What do you mean by readiness for sales?
Wow, that's a great question. In fact, the way to address the journey is to look at how do you hire good salespeople. In a lot of places, people hire salespeople and they're wondering, why the hell do I have these people, right? Because they are not delivering. So you have to first look at what are the competencies that we need to look for hiring. So I have 5 different competencies, and you will have to start looking at, do people fulfill these? And these are very simple: hungry, humble, smart, disciplined, team player. Right? Now, in a lot of cases, what I've seen working with salespeople, there is a lot of smarts. They are disciplined. But the fact is, hungry, humble, and team player is missing. Right? So we've gone into a culture where we celebrate the hero, but not the team player. So when you think about readiness, the first thing that we need to look at is these foundational characteristics of salespeople. Have we addressed it or not? That's point number 1. The second thing that we need to do is what I say, define a profile for the future, which means what is my profile of a salesperson for 2025? And then rehire people for the role. Right? And that is when you'll realize that perhaps in some organizations, they mistake tenure for competence. Just because you've been in the company for 10 years doesn't make you smart. Right? So what we have to start looking at, is there a profile of excellence that we can start rehiring people for? Correct? And the third and the most important element of readiness is primarily what I look at is the breadth and diversity. So normally in a salesperson, you would look at it as T, which means what are the depth profiles you've done? What are the breadth profiles you've done? So have you been in sales? Have you been in service? Do you understand business? Do you understand technology? right? So are you crisscrossing through all of these in your journey? Because if there is no diversity, then there is no innovation, right? So what you're looking at is, hey, these simple 5 characteristics, right? The ability to be relevant in the future and the ability to balance depth and breadth. That really tells you, do I have the right person on the team or not?
Fantastic. This actually reminded me of some of the coaching sessions you used to give me just after the appraisal, the performance review at Microsoft, and you spoke like a Microsoftie. So
You know how these, umbilical cords are still impacted.
once you are a Microsoftie, you're always a Microsoftie. Fantastic. So that's what I like about you, Venkat. You actually put things in a very well-defined, framework-driven manner, which are easy to implement. So thanks for that definition of readiness, both for hiring managers and individuals. So we're almost coming to the end of this interview, and I have a question for Priya. So this is something that a lot of women entrepreneurs would look for. So as a successful woman entrepreneur, what challenges did you face, and what is the one line advice that you have for women planning to start a business?
Wow. It seems like a very, I don't know, it seems to me that you've just been there and doing it. I don't know whether I have the ability to share knowledge as yet, but a few things, Jani, that I can share here from my own personal experiences. Uh, as a person with a lot of passion to, with the idea that we come up with with something that we want to do and achieve, it seems that the world looks at it as, you're being very aggressive, and then obviously you want to be assertive. As a woman, you want to be assertive. But what I have learned in this process of all this battle between aggressive, assertive, is to say, hey, do you have the ability to inspire? Because I believe inspiration has no gender. So I just feel that I have to learn to inspire people rather than coming across in a very strong manner or thinking I'm very assertive. I don't know what I'm missing. So I've rather kind of gotten away from it to say, how do I inspire people? And that's been a journey to learn. The other aspect that I have personally learned is as an entrepreneur, collaboration seems to be the way you can scale, where you can scale your idea, scale your business, etc. So I've learned that we need to be conscious and have a very critical lens to collaboration, because every person says, oh, let's collaborate, let's build the business, and you don't know who can come into that inner circle, because sometimes understanding with whom you should partner with, and and how you can build that coherence between 2 or 3 people when they come together, that's a very important skill to learn. And I think we've learned it being in the entrepreneurial zone, to say, hey, these are the things that you should avoid, and these are things you should work more on. But understanding the true meaning of collaboration and partnerships will really help a person, not just a women entrepreneur, but just anybody who wants to have an idea and grow it, to be conscious and take it forward. The other aspect is to build that level of clarity of purpose, and clarity and alignment to who you are as an individual, to what you want to achieve. And don't get constantly rattled by the different voices we keep hearing, right? And sometimes it could be our own voice that can put us down. So and Venkat has this quote, and it's not my quote, but Venkat says, stop the constant chatter in your head, Priya, and listen to the wisdom of the soul. I get this statement almost weekly once, because I come up, I get a little agitated when I see something happening against what we have in our plans, or anytime there's a little shift, and then he says, calm down and listen to the wisdom of your soul. Don't get to the voices in the head. And I think that is deeply helped so far. And as a women entrepreneur, I also have learned that, it's important to not go after perfection. That's something that women tend to be often known for. I mean, this perfection mindset. So unless we learn to accept imperfections, we cannot scale. So the first 5 years of the journey was so different in the business, because everybody had to be like us, and will they be able to deliver? And then you slowly loosen up to say, hey, it's possible. Maybe the customer is not expecting only this. They can also accept that. So that it's about looking at multiplication rather than subtraction, right? So I think that was also an aspect that I have learned, and I think both Venkat and I have learned as we have scaled our businesses. And I think one final thing that that I've learned is, listen to your intuition, and then and then build on, all the reason, etc. After that, sometimes that the seat of intuition gives you the direction, and then you should couple it with whatever is your data, research, etc. But I think having that intuitive moment and spaces can be a great ally for people like us, like Jani, you and Venkat and me, where we grow our business, our idea, whatever, right? So having that space is very important, and accessing that space is also very important, which I have personally done, and I would encourage a lot of people to, to access.
Excellent. So, Venkat and Priya, it's been an honor to have you on my show. I constantly draw inspiration from you on how you transformed and how you inspire others. So continue to inspire us, and I wish all the best for Tripura Multinational and your ambitious goal of touching billion people. So thanks so much, and we'll have a follow-up discussion on this.
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, while we are still live and on TV, Johnny, I want to acknowledge you as well. I've seen the journey you've been on. I see that within you is this spirit of excellence, which wants to go ahead and serve others. So very clearly, I want to acknowledge that heart that you bring in as you start delivering to each one of your customers. The second thing I want to acknowledge is the passion that you have, which really translates into the expertise and the differentiation you have built for yourself, right? Remember, there are very few Rambos in the world, right? Here is a single man who's trying to go ahead and make a difference by providing perspectives and possibilities for some of the world's best organizations, and very clearly wanting to make a difference to the world. So I want to go ahead and put it on record that you have our deepest appreciation. You have our deepest respect as you try and touch and transform people in your own special way through the power and possibilities of technology, Johnny.
Thank you so much. It means a lot, Venkat, coming from you, because I literally learned the fundamentals, the ABCs of sales from you. So it means a lot. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Johnny.
Thank you. All the very best, Jani, and thank you very much.
Thank you.